Hey, what's going on, Who Dat Nation? And welcome to another edition of the State of the Saints podcast, where we talk New Orleans Saints. My name is TJ Jones. Thanks for checking out the podcast. I really do appreciate it. Well, Who Dat Nation, it's time for another edition of the Q&A edition of the State of the Saints podcast, where I take questions from listeners of the show. And first off, before I get started, I just want to say thank you if you're listening to the podcast right now. It's extremely humbling that you took the time out to listen to the podcast. And I want to say thank you to those that comment, that share, and like the videos that I put up. Because at the end of the day, I always say I'm just a Saints fan, and I love to talk about the New Orleans Saints, my hometown team. But I really appreciate the love and the support that is given by you, the loyal listener of the State of the Saints podcast. And even if this is your first time listening to the podcast, thank you very much also, because I understand that there are so many other selections you can choose from, whether you're listening on Facebook or you're listening on YouTube. There are so many other things that could spark your interest and you can be paying attention to. So it's always extremely humbling when I hear that people take the time out to listen to the podcast. So once again, thank you very much. But let's go ahead and get into it. I got 3 questions that I am going to answer, and these questions come from listeners of the podcast. So the first question comes from Ricky Mullen. Ricky asks, what do you think of Alvin Kamara's Pro Bowl snub? That's a good question. What do I think about Alvin Kamara's Pro Bowl snub? I think the same way as many other people in the Who Dat Nation. As a matter of fact, I think the same way as other people that are fans of the National Football League. You don't even have to be a fan of New Orleans Saints. I mean, Stevie Wonder can see that Alvin Kamara deserves to be in the Pro Bowl. The guy is a Swiss Army knife. He's an incredible talent. I think that the talent of Alvin Kamara only comes around once in a few years. The closest thing I could think of to a Alvin Kamara is probably Marshall Faulk. I think that he is the second coming of Marshall Faulk. I mean, the way he can catch out of the backfield, the way he can run in between the tackles, he can do so many things. It's just amazing. I said on the last podcast that he was a wide receiver masquerading as a running back. I never seen a running back have the hands like Alvin Kamara has. I mean, usually when a running back has hands like this, they usually change his position to wide receiver. I mean, the way that he can just catch out the backfield, and I'm not just talking about you just throw him a screen pass and he just takes a yard. He has to catch the ball over his shoulder. I mean, he catches contested passes and everything. Like, he catches them as if he is a wide receiver. So he's just an incredible talent. I don't think that there are 3 running backs that are better than him in the National Football League right now. Now, I can understand some of the selections. I mean, Ty Gurley, he had an amazing season as well. I think that he deserves to be in a Pro Bowl. You can even put Zeke Elliott in there because he's the NFL's leading rusher. He has the most yards in the NFL among running backs. But when you talk about Saquon Barkley, now come on, man. Like, I understand Saquon Barkley is a heck of a talent in his own right. I understand he was the number 2 pick in the NFL draft. But he is not, I repeat, is not better than Alvin Kamara at this stage of his career. Did he have a good rookie campaign? Absolutely. But I just feel like that is one of the perks he has in playing in a big media market. I mean, he plays in New York, so he gets a lot of attention. He gets a lot of the press, and people get an opportunity to see him all the time because despite the fact that the New York Football Giants have been absolutely terrible this season, he still gets attention because he plays in New York. So I feel like that had a lot to do with it. To answer your question, yes, I believe that he got snubbed. He deserved to be in the Pro Bowl. And I think linebacker Demario Davis said it best when he said this.
Biggest snub in the league right here. That's all right, come on. The biggest snub in the league.
The number 1
Y'all
seed.
put a chip on that boy's shoulder.
My thoughts exactly. But thanks for your question, Rick. I really do appreciate it. Next question comes from Travis Hall. And Travis asks, what do you think is the Saints' biggest need in this year NFL draft? That's a good question, Travis, and thank you for your question. I think that the Saints' biggest need, to me, is a tight end. And last year, I thought that they were going to try to get a tight end in the first round because I felt last year they had some good tight ends that were in the NFL draft. You had Mike Gesicki that came out of Penn State. I got an opportunity to watch him quite a bit because when Penn State went on their run, I was able to see their quarterback, Trace McSorley, throw him the ball. And Mike Gesicki always made that tough contested catch. I feel like that would have been a good look for the New Orleans Saints. Especially his blocking and his pass catching ability. And then you also had Dallas Goedert, who plays for the Philadelphia Eagles now out of North Dakota State. I thought that he would have been a good tight end for the Saints. But I do think that the Saints do need a pass catching tight end. They always suffered with this particular position when they got rid of Jimmy Graham, when they traded him to the Seattle Seahawks for Max Unger. There hasn't been a tight end that has came in that has had a role like a Jimmy Graham since. They tried to do it with Kobe Fleener. In my opinion, I don't think he was the answer. In between dropping passes and suffering several concussions, he wasn't the answer. And then you had Mike Homanawinui, and you had him come in from the New England Patriots, but he has a track record of being injured. So I think that the Saints need a tight end that can catch passes and also block. And I think that this draft has some good ones. You can look at Irv Smith, the tight end out of Alabama. He has good size with him. I think he's maybe like 6'6", maybe 245 pounds. He's a pass-catching tight end. He has made some good catches, and he's a guy who's been moving the chains this year for the Alabama Crimson Tide. And also be on the lookout for Noah Fant. He's a tight end out of the University of Iowa. Iowa has a track record of having some good tight ends come out of their school. So I think that those two guys kind of stick out in my mind when it comes to pass catching tight ends. But I do think the Saints need to address this position because Ben Watson, as valuable of an asset he is, I seen him make some tough catches. I also seen him drop some passes also. But we all know that old saying that Father Time is undefeated. Ben Watson had just turned 38 years old. And, you know, his best days are behind him. So the Saints definitely need someone to step up, rather it be Dan Arnold or Josh Hill. I think that we see everything we're going to see out of Josh Hill. I think that a couple years ago they had Josh Hill as being one of the next big tight ends, but he hasn't lived up to those expectations. So I think that the Saints may need to go into the draft and draft a tight end, hopefully a Irv Smith or a Noah Fant. And the final question comes from Roy White. Roy asks, what team is the biggest threat to the Saints in the playoffs? Well, as we all know that the Saints have home field advantage throughout the playoffs. They are the #1 seed. So any team that plays against them has to come to the Mercedes-Benz Superdome, which is, in my opinion, the toughest place in the NFL to play. But who do I think is the biggest threat to the New Orleans Saints in the playoffs? It's not who you think it is. It's not the Chicago Bears, who everybody's talking about because they have Khalil Mack and they have Akeem Hicks and all that. You know, I know people are talking about how the Chicago Bears defense is just legit. Yeah, I understand that. I know people are talking about the Dallas Cowboys, talking about their defense. Whatever. I know people are talking about the Los Angeles Rams, saying that the Saints played them and they didn't have a key to leave, and a key to leave is going to play in this game if they play again. But I'm not concerned about any of those teams. The team that I am mostly concerned about is the Seattle Seahawks. The Seattle Seahawks scare me, man. I've been watching the Seattle Seahawks for weeks, and I'm going to be honest with you. They are one of the teams that a lot of people aren't talking about, maybe because they feel like they should have fell off. Maybe they feel like they are an anomaly. This is a team that is going to make a Super Bowl run. They're just a team that is exceeding expectations, and they're going to just go to the playoffs, and that's about it. This is a good football team. I don't know if you all watched them on Sunday Night Football against the Kansas City Chiefs, but they beat the Kansas City Chiefs, man, and they did it pretty decisively. You know, that defense came to play on Sunday night, and they made Patrick Mahomes very, very frustrated, man, very frustrated. And I think that a quarterback like Russell Wilson will give the Saints defense fits. Because I said last time on the podcast when the Saints played the Pittsburgh Steelers on my Week 16 review that Big Ben Roethlisberger, his ability to prolong the plays and extend plays, that makes wide receivers break out of their routes and get open. And Russell Wilson does that really well. I mean, when he's in the pocket, he can really get out of the pocket on rollouts. If he's under duress, he can make plays with his feet, prolong plays to throw that ball down the field. I mean, Russell Wilson scares me as a quarterback. And the Seattle Seahawks defense, I feel like they can put the Saints offense at bay. This is a very dangerous team. I think that this team will do some damage, and I think that they will get out of the first round. Now, will the Saints play them in a divisional round? That's yet to be seen, or nobody knows just quite yet because the positionings in the playoff picture have not been solidified yet. But this team really does scare me. On the Seattle Seahawks, they have what it takes. They're a team that can run the football. They can play good defense, and they have a quarterback that's a winner. I mean, Russell Wilson is a Super Bowl winning quarterback. He plays with a chip on his shoulder, and you know he has a lot to prove because a lot of people believe that the Legion of Boom carried Russell Wilson throughout the years, and now we're seeing that Russell Wilson is the undeniable leader of the Seattle Seahawks team. So I think he has something to prove. He wants to show that he can win a Super Bowl without the Legion of Boom. He wants to be the catalyst. He wants to be the leader. He wants to be the guy that everybody looks at and says, okay, you know, he's one of the guys we need to be talking about when we talk about the Aaron Rodgers and the Drew Brees and the Patrick Mahomes. What about Russell Wilson? So I think that this might be his moment. And because of that, it scares me. But do I think that they will beat the Saints? No. But they will give the Saints a lot more than they bargained for. And this has been a Q&A edition of the State of the Saints podcast. I would like to thank you all for submitting your questions. And I want to give you a quick reminder to subscribe to the State of the Saints podcast on YouTube. Go to youtube.com, search the State of the Saints podcast, and also follow the State of the Saints podcast on Twitter, SOTS Podcast 8, SOTS Podcast 8. And the State of the Saints podcast is available on iTunes, Spotify, and iHeartRadio.com. Till next time, all I have to say is, who dat?